I'm so glad to be back. And it looks like none of y'all went for your cars, and that's a good sign. So thank you for staying with me. So you guys ready to continue rethinking? Because we got some rethinking to do. Because how we're doing it isn't working. It's not working for you. It's not working for me. And there's some action that we can take to help ourselves. So I just did the ringing of our bells to bring us back together. And let us take one more of those big, let's get back together in our shared present moment. A big inhale and a big exhale. Beautiful. And you can keep your cell phones handy. I'll have another, just a short couple questions, just like I did before at the end, so you can check your progress and see if your perception has changed and if you're going to reprioritize how you take care of yourself as a result of our time together. So we're going to take a deeper dive in this session. And we're going to look at the root causes, start looking at a care plan that you can curate for yourself. And we're going to jump right in with talking about trauma, body, mind, essence, the innate care plan, and thriving in life. So, perfect segue, because Gabor Mate has been here before, but maybe not all of you were here before. But we're going to use his very accessible definition of what is trauma. Because what we discovered is there's a glaring gap in the evidence base around compassion fatigue and burnout, in that they are not trauma-informed. And that's why they're not working. That's why we haven't moved the needle on compassion fatigue. We haven't moved the needle on burnout, is because we haven't gone deep enough to the root cause, which is occupational-related trauma. So Gabor Mate's definition is trauma is not what happens to you, but it's what happens inside of you as a result of what happens to you. And I'm going to unpack some of that for us in a moment. In the book, A Body Keeps Score, which many of you may have seen or read, we've learned that trauma is not just an event that took place sometimes in the past. And this is important. It is the imprint of that experience on the mind, brain, and body. So whatever traumas you have experienced, if they did not get fully healed or integrated at the time, they are imprinted within you, within each of us, including me. And I mean, clearly I came here to do trauma, right? My whole life, as I have shared just the pieces of, has been I've had a lot of trauma. All right, so we're going to talk about that. And one of the things that doesn't get talked about a lot that is super important is that there is a transpersonal nature to trauma. And Dr. Bonnie Badenoch is one of my heroes and a dear colleague. And her research strongly suggests that who we perceive as being with us at the time, before, during, and after the trauma, is central to our ability to integrate it throughout our embodied and relational brains. So a lot of times we have people with us when we go through traumatic situations and events, but they may not be equipped, as most of us are not, to facilitate trauma integration so that it doesn't get imprinted. Everybody's doing the best that they can with the tools, the information, and the awareness that they have in the given moment. But we are not all skilled and educated in how to help each other integrate trauma so they don't imprint. So we just talked about all of this. Now I know it's in the morning, but you've had your coffee and it's only been 15 minutes. Are we good? All right, I'm going to keep moving. So what we have essentially, and this is where the big problem is that all of us, by virtue of being human, it's like I call this the trifecta of trauma. We have our lived experience. And contrary to the World Health Organization's perspective that we have one nervous system at work and one nervous system at home, all right, so we know that's fundamentally false. So we have individual traumas, and then we have the unavoidable traumas that come. They're inherent with our role. It's and we get training for that. But what is really problematic, what is wreaking havoc in compassion fatigue, in burnout, is the avoidable occupational trauma. And that leads to things like absenteeism, presenteeism, which is I'm there, but I'm not really there. I'm doing my best, but I can't fully engage. I want to, but I can't because of, we're going to get into it. And that's really, it's the avoidable that's so problematic. So we're going to divide into teams because guess what? Y'all are going to be my research assistants. How does that sound? And we're going to do a symptom cluster analysis. So if you are on this side of the projector, on this side, you are on team pink, your compassion fatigue. Now, mind you, you're going to be shouting out answers, and I brought prizes. This is, all right? So just to let you know, this is like, you want this. And over here on this side of the projector, you guys are going to be on team burnout. And at home, in our virtual audience, give me a couple more slides and I'll tell you what teams you're on. So we're going to use SAMHSA's criteria to define the symptoms of trauma, which results from an event or series of events or circumstances that is experienced physically or emotionally and has lasting, operative word, lasting adverse effects. Which is why someone who experienced a childhood trauma at the age of 6 can be still suffering at the age of 66. Right? That is real. Lasting effects of trauma. All right? And it affects us in our functioning, mental, physical, social, emotional, and spiritual well-being, all dimensions. All dimensions of life. Trauma wreaks havoc. So let's see, how does it do that? I have at the back table where I'll be hanging out after our time together is done, I have some infographics that explain. You're welcome to take some of the infographic with you, so just stop by and say hello. And here's our teams, and then for our remote audience, if you wear glasses or contacts, you're on compassion fatigue, and if you don't wear glasses or contacts, you're on team burnout. All right, everybody got their team? Okay, burnout, compassion fatigue, remote audience, you know what to do. So let's do what's called a symptom cluster analysis. That's a big old mouthful to say that was what my research was, because I went deep diving into the evidence base and said, what are these symptoms really saying? You know, we hear about it, we experience them. Oh, you're tired. Oh, you're burned out. Oh, you must have compassion fatigue. Well, let's go deeper than the evidence base, because we just determined we have a big hole in the evidence base, right? There's a big gap. So we're coming in with our Mack truck. When we look at the physical domain, health domain of symptoms, we have exhaustion, fatigue, trembling, shaking, somatization, increased cortisol, chronic illnesses, which I'm going to unpack in a moment, hormonal imbalances, which has to do with the thing called our HPA axis, which we don't have to unpack, but if your hormones are wonky, you want to pay attention. And then we have increased susceptibility to illness, GI issues, headaches, aches, and pains. All right. So, pink hearts. Do we have a lot or a little physical symptoms with compassion fatigue? You come up here and get your prize. Now you got to say it louder next time, though. All right. Team green, I need to hear you. In the physical domain, is there a lot of overlap or a little bit of overlap between compassion fatigue and burnout symptoms? Oh, come get your prize. All right. Now let's look at the behavioral domain. Congratulations. Thank you. All right. Now, mind you, spoiler alert. The symptoms that I've listed on these note cards before you are all immediate or delayed responses to trauma. Look how they map. So if all of the words on the first slide in physical are delayed or immediate responses to trauma, and they're also compassion fatigue symptoms, and they're also burnout symptoms. Are we curious? Because I'm curious. That was me in the middle of the night getting very curious while I was doing research. So I continued on, as you are all going to help me. We're going to do behavioral. So if you have decreased energy, you just can't do the things you love to do. You want to, but you just can't drag your sorry backside to go do it, even though it's your most favorite thing with your most beloved people. If you are withdrawn, having difficulty in your relationships, maybe you're not motivated, feeling a little apathetic, your sleep patterns are changing, maybe not for the better. Maybe you're using a little more alcohol or substance than you would ordinarily. Maybe you're experiencing absenteeism or presenteeism at work. Maybe you're engaging in more high-risk behaviors than you normally would. Maybe you're procrastinating or avoiding. Is that a personality flaw, any of those things? No. Character deficit? Can we just tell who they can stop with the gaslighting burnout narrative? Can we just put an end to that? Team compassion fatigue. Do we have a lot or a little overlap in symptoms? Well, I think I heard it right here. Come get your prize. All right, team compassion fatigue. You know the drill. You guys kind of redeemed yourself. Because the first one, I know it was the first one out of the gate, and you're like, I don't know, do I want to shout out or not? And then these guys came out strong. So your job is to come out stronger than they just did. All right, are you ready? Team burnout. Is there a lot or a little overlap between trauma, compassion fatigue, and burnout syndrome? Oh, I heard over here. Did I hear over at this table? Come on down. You are the next contestant on the Microdoses Matters kits, which is what these are. All right, so let's continue. Congratulations. Emotional domain. Look at this. Detached, depersonalized, helpless, in denial, overwhelmed. How many of us have been overwhelmed? Yeah, right? It's like it's the status quo. It's the status quo anymore. Feeling out of control, anxious, sad, depressed, irritable, or angry, compassion fatigue, a lot or a little. I heard back at this table with the yellow shirt, maybe somewhere over here. Yeah. Come on down. All right, let's look at cognitive, mental. Difficulty concentrating, brain fog. That, if you're feeling brain foggy, that is real. That is not you having too much sugar or not getting enough sleep. While those might be true, if you have persistent brain fog, this is really a cardinal sign. All right, feelings of failure, negativity, memory changes, distracted, mind racing, intrusive thoughts, hypervigilance. Team burnout. Do we have a lot or a little? A lot. Oh gosh, was it you? All right. You can take it. And then find the person at your table who actually shouted louder. All right. Okay. Just to keep it real, I mean, I can only hear and see so far. And these are my glasses for only 3 feet, so. And lastly, social and existential domains. This one was huge for me, distancing from other people and social events, because I just didn't have the bandwidth. Not that I didn't love my people. I just couldn't people, because there was no energy. Interpersonal conflicts, isolation, withdrawn, diminished personal efficacy, loss of meaning, hopelessness, loss of purpose, loss of purpose, that was me in 2008's fire ceremony. This whole existential, that was me in 2008, every single one of them. Reduced interest and so forth. All right, so one from each team. Last prizes for this round. We're going to answer this together. All right. A lot! All right. Back table in the corner, somebody come get a prize. And back table way back there, somebody come get a prize. Because I know I can't hear you from here. So this might have you guys wondering, as it had me wondering, I wonder, or as my dad would say, in his infinite dad joke wisdom, which my dad is hysterical, by the way, if it looks like a duck and it walks like a duck and it quacks like a duck, then it's a duck. So what if compassion fatigue and burnout symptoms are just the tip? What if it's just the tip of the occupational trauma iceberg? And that's indeed what was born out of my research. So that's our trauma refresher. And now we're going to look a little bit about how it shows up in your body in ways that you can connect with, and we'll come up with, I know it is warm in here, huh? I'm feeling you. And how it affects us. But first we have to take a look at we've all heard the term body, mind, spirit, right? We all know that. And it's an attempt to take a holistic view of personhood. When in fact, when it comes to trauma, it affects so much more than just body, mind, and spirit. So I defined the term body, mind, essence to capture everything that you see on the screen, including cultural, societal suffering, oppressions of all sorts, whether patriarchal or colonial, and all of the different ways of being and knowing and doing in our human lived experience beyond body, mind, spirit. So in my work, I use body, mind, essence, which is the unique living integration of body, mind, and essential self, a dynamic interplay shaped by lived experience and stored trauma and our innate capacity for healing. It recognizes that unintegrated trauma is not just a psychological phenomenon, but it's rather affecting both the physical and emotional well-being until conditions are favorable for healing. And today, my friends, conditions are favorable because you're all here. And there's windows in our life. So how does that imprint work? Like, where does it get stored in our bodies? It gets stored in our muscles and our fascia. Like, my fascia looks like a jar of marbles. Yes, I said that. And so what I call unintegrated trauma, I call it unhealed bits of wisdom, because it will come to the surface when conditions are favorable for healing. Not always at the most comfortable time or in the most comfortable of manners. And in our neuroplexes and our soma. So trauma can be stored in a myriad of ways. And now we're going to talk about what happens at the cellular level. And here's this beautiful animation that tells you everything you need to know about what I learned in my undergraduate degree in biology, right? So here's a cell, and what we're going to focus on, see these red little, they look like hot tamale candies? See those in there, right? If you know, you know, right? All right, those are our mitochondria. And the mitochondria are super important. They have a bazillion jobs. They produce our energy. That is like the top job of the mitochondria, is to get you through your day, energy speaking. Also helps us with our tissues and metabolism and so forth. But here's the thing that you want to know about mitochondria, not to make this biology 101, but trauma affects the mitochondria and creates oxidative stress. And that damages the mitochondria. And if the mitochondria are damaged, can they produce more or little energy? You get a prize. That was an impromptu. You got to play along, guys. All right. So what happens is that when those mitochondria get damaged, they get rigid, stiff, kind of like my back in the morning, right? And then they can't do their jobs. And as it turns out, when the mitochondria can't do their jobs, a whole host of chronic conditions result. So it goes like this. We have trauma, any of the things that you saw on our menu of trauma experiences that gets our cells to go into what's called cell danger response. Danger, danger. The cells over time, if there's too much stress or too much trauma, they get stuck in danger. And then we get persistent inflammation. Anybody here familiar with persistent inflammation? You don't have to raise your hand, but I am a founding member of that club. And that leads to systemic dysfunction. And all of the things that you see listed on this slide, PTSD, autism spectrum disorder, mast cell activation syndrome, mold toxicity, Lyme, autoimmune diseases, environmental illnesses, multiple chemical sensitivities, chronic fatigue syndrome, myalgic encephalomyelitis, fibromyalgia, migraines, Alzheimer's, Parkinson's, and through a mechanistic overlap, metabolic syndrome and cancer. You mean to tell me trauma can do all of that with that imprint left in over time? Can damage the mitochondria to the point where this can happen? I mean, do I have your attention? Because this was me not sleeping for 3 days when I figured this out. I was like, oh, this is huge. So here's the big gap. It looks like on the outside that it's compassion fatigue and burnout. Resilience. You have resilience. You should work on your resilience. I don't want to ever hear that again in my career. But usually what it is it's occupational trauma that's being misdiagnosed. And the sad part about it is our healthcare systems are not designed to manage or address chronic conditions. We do great with acute care. If I fall off the ladder cleaning my gutters, man, I know I'll get rushed to the hospital and I'll get right where I need to go. If I'm out hiking and a mountain lion chases me off a cliff and I need to get airlifted out, that'll happen. But if I have any of these things, well, good luck with that. You know, you have to come out of pocket or seek other solutions, or in my case, you'll live out of your truck for a year and try and figure it out by yourself. All right, so this is where it gets really hard and where it is upon each of us to take responsibility for the acknowledging the trauma that we have experienced in our life and how to navigate it. All right? But first, we're going to do what's called a microdoses matters practice, because that was a lot of information. So let's let those synapses do what they need to do. Let's acknowledge that this room is a safe and private space. Join me here at this beautiful lake, Eagle's Nest in northern New Mexico. On your table, we'll find a little pebble, a little grounding stone. So let's go ahead and get that in your hands. And here's how you can, in under 30 seconds, start to regulate your nervous system and keep that trauma from imprinting, even while you're at work on the busiest of days. Right? So I'm not asking you to find more time in your schedule. Nope. I know how it is. All right, so here we go. Soften your eyes or close them if you choose, acknowledging that we are all safe in this room. We are all safe, seen, felt, and so deeply loved. We're going to take the grounding stone in our hand and we're going to rub it between our thumb and our forefinger, and we're just noticing, does it feel smooth? Is it rough? Is it heavy? Is it light? Are we feeling, is it easy to twirl in our thumb and fingers, or is it difficult? And now we're going to signal, the most important thing while we're grounding is we're going to signal that we're safe to our nervous system. And we're going to inhale to the count of 4. Inhale, 2, 3, 4. Hold, 2, 3, 4. Exhale, 2, 3, 4. Relax, 2, 3, 4. Now we're going to put one or both of our hands over our healer's heart. Feel that connection to your why, to what matters most, remembering. And then when you're ready, you can gently wiggle your fingers, your toes, and join me back here. I mean, that wasn't even, you could do that in 30 seconds. It took me a minute because we were talking through it. See how, do you feel that? Right? We just went from information overload to, So let's find out what just happened. We're going to look at Polyvagal Theory. By show of hands, how many of you are familiar with Polyvagal Theory? Just so I can time the presentation. So about 20% maybe. All right, so you're all going back to work. Now you're all on the same team. You're on Team Green. And Team Green, you have one thing to remember. Green is good. All right, so what is green? What is green? I only have one prize left. Huh? All right, that was our practice round. We'll do more. All right, so remembering that trauma is what happens inside of us. It can leave an imprint. And we're going to talk about a little bit about our brain and our vagus nerve. And so the limbic system, how many of you have heard about the limbic system? Fight or flight, okay, most of us. And this isn't, I'm not looking to make this a pathophysiology course, although I do teach one if you're interested. All right, but these are the anatomical structures that we're going to be looking at today. And we're going to start by I use Dan Siegel's model about how does trauma affect our brain. And so what we have, he uses his fist because he got tired of lugging all those anatomical models everywhere he went. And so what we have here is the upstairs brain. That's the one that we're all using right now. We're thinking, we're processing information, we're prioritizing, we're thinking about, I wonder what they're having for lunch, is she going to end on time, I'm getting hungry, all of those things, right? And here's our spinal cord, and here's in here is our downstairs brain, right, underneath this line. And now we're going to pay attention to our thumb, which is our limbic system. So what happens when we experience trauma is that, or we have a trauma response from something that happened long ago, right? How many of you have seen or know people, you might be those people, I'm this people sometimes, that you have an overblown reaction to something that's pretty minor, right? That is a sign that you are having an unhealed bit of wisdom or unintegrated trauma that's coming to the surface. So don't judge it. Be curious about it. Whew, that seems a little overblown. That's not like me. And what do? Oh, I should do this, I should do that, you know, and all the chatter starts. Okay, that is unhealed trauma that is asking for your attention so it can be released from your body. So when that happens, though, is that we flip our lid. And so this upstairs brain of higher reasoning and logic, it goes offline for a minute. And guess who gets in the driver's seat? The limbic system. Unchecked by the upstairs brain and starts running amok. And sometimes this is called the reptile brain. Have you guys heard that? You know, your reptile brain? Okay. And so it's primal. And so you are experiencing something, or your body is releasing something that you experienced long ago, and you are having this reptile brain-like response to it, as opposed to being your poised, rational, reasonable self. So when this happens, this is not a character flaw. This is an adaptation, and it just means that the limbic system is in control right now. It's running the show. Can we have a rational conversation with the limbic system? We cannot. So this is why if your toddler is having a meltdown, is not the time to have a 5-point talk about what went wrong, right? Because they can't any more than we can. So when we see this in ourselves or in others, please remember and hold compassion. Compassion that this is a trauma behavioral adaptation and not a conscious choice. But when it's your intimate partner or a coworker who is on your last frayed nerve, it feels very personal. but it's not. We get back in our upstairs brain and remember. They are not choosing this, they're having, and oftentimes, without their awareness, a trauma response, right? And that was really a central theme in Dr. Bruce Perry's book, What Happened to You? And he really put this out there, and I invite all of you to embrace this as I have, is getting curious instead of saying, what is wrong with you? What is wrong with me? And we kind of get this disdain and this negativity, right? Because it's uncomfortable. It's uncomfortable when people are yelling at us or when we are having an overblown reaction. But instead, step in with your healer's heart and whew, I wonder what happened to you in your life. I don't need to know, but I'm just going to hold compassion for that because I can see that you have been through a lot too in your life. All right, so let's talk about nervous system regulation and how the game is played, all right? So down here in our social engagement, what is green? Good. We want to be in green. We want to be safe. We want to be in the present moment. We want to be connected within and with others. We want to be able to see the big picture. It's where our best critical thinking and clinical judgment happens, is here. We want to be compassionate and mindful. Now, would that describe characteristics that would be helpful for you in your professional role? Yes, or you wouldn't be here. But what happens is that we don't spend time in green. We get too much stimulation, we get too much stress, we get too much avoidable trauma exposure, and it puts us in fight or flight. And if that happens, then we can go into sympathetic overdrive. And that was one of the questions, the hamster, right? The hamster's like, I don't even know how I'm doing because I'm running on this wheel as fast as I can, right? That's sympathetic overdrive. That's a nurse working a 12-hour shift who can't have a morsel of food, a sip of water, or use the washroom, right? That's sympathetic overdrive. And we can do that for a little bit of time. But is that what's happening? No. We're all experiencing a lot of trauma, a lot of time. And then what happens is the dorsal aspect of that vagus nerve that runs all the way down, right, innervates everything, including our gut, hence the term gut instincts, will shut us down into energy conservation mode. Because remember our friends, those mitochondria? The trauma exposure and the stress load is so high that the mitochondria literally cannot produce the energy that you need. Enter brain fog. Enter feeling shut down, feeling hopeless, being numb, depressed, having little energy. All the things, remember those symptoms from before? So where do we want to be? Green is good. So you can see here in this sine wave, we want that sympathetic to come online to a certain degree to help us manage the stressors of everyday living. Should we live in sympathetic flight or overdrive as a lifestyle? No. What about being in dorsal vagal, utterly hopeless and overwhelmed? Should we be living there? The vast majority of us in this community, online and in person, are in those questions that you answered for me earlier. This is where we are. There was only like 22 or 28% of us that were here. So the 3 out of the 4 of us at the table, 1 of 4 of y'all were here. 3 of the 4 of you are in one of these. Well, and I just won't have it. So how does it work? So how can I help? So what happens is we have this process in our midbrain called neuroception. And it's like the threat detector is what Porges calls it. And it's serving not only external environment for cues that you might be unsafe, but also our internal. Everything that got stored in our body, the unintegrated trauma, those unhealed bits of wisdom, it also scans for that to triangulate, to make sense if you are safe or are at risk or in danger, right? That's neuroception. And that's why if we had a major traumatic event that happened right now, everybody in this room would have a different trauma response. Not because of the external event, but because of what is stored in our repository. So we have some circuits and hybrids. There's 3 circuits. There's ventral vagal. That's green for good, right? That's where we want to be, regulated in our nervous system. And from that, we can also have play and stillness. But what happens if we're in sympathetic? Is stillness available to us? If you're in fight or flight, can you sit down and meditate easily? No. No, that's where a lot of well-intended mindfulness practitioners fail. We have to match up where we are in our nervous system. And same with dorsal vagal when we are shut down. Just checking the time. All right. So the thing about this ladder is you can't skip a state. So you can't be in ventral vagal and go to complete shutdown in dorsal vagal. You know, when the mitochondria are overtaxed and you can't produce the energy, you have to go through sympathetic. And conversely, on the way up. And so what we have are the mixtures, the hybrids, is when we can play. Do we play when we feel safe, or do we play when we feel like we're in danger? Good. Green is good. Stillness, mindfulness, contemplative practices. Can we do that if we feel safe? Can we do it if we're running from a saber-toothed tiger in our nervous system? No. All right. But what if you can't? So sympathetic is either fight or flight. We all know that, right? That's common knowledge. But what if, let's say if you're a nurse, you can't fight. That day I couldn't fight back my patient that assaulted me. And I can't flee because it would be patient abandonment and I would lose my nursing license. So the nervous system has a great thing for that. It's called fawning. When you can't fight, you can't flee, then you become a yes man or a yes woman. What do you need me to say? What do you need me to do? Yes, 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 yes. Please and appease. And that doesn't mean that you are, sucking up. It means that your nervous system adaptation when you can't fight or flee. And this whole slide here is just to show us that each of us have different dimmer switches. These are not on-off switches, how this works in our body. These are dimmer switches that depend upon your external circumstances and the trauma that is stored internally in your body. And that's why we all have different trauma responses. So what we want to be again is green. We want to be in ventral vagal tone, which fundamentally requires us to feel safe and to be safe in our roles. Whether that's physically safe, emotionally safe, mentally safe, any sense of the word. How many of you have moments where you feel unsafe or maybe a little bit threatened in your role? Yeah. Yeah, and that would include bullying and gaslighting and, corporate betrayals and all sorts of things can make us feel unsafe. So this is what's called the window of tolerance, and that is our goal. We want to be in our window of tolerance, meaning that no matter what happens on the outside, we are regulated in our nervous system, our mitochondria are protected, and we are less likely to have any of those chronic conditions that we talked about earlier. And if we do already have those chronic conditions, it will help us to heal and find our way back to homeostasis and well-being. So what opens that window? Feeling safe. Green is good. It's not that hard. Like when we're talking, this is all your reptilian nervous system. The autonomic nervous system that has kept us alive over the millennia. It's not that complicated. But it's our upstairs brain that wants to try and make it so much more complicated than it really is. So we need to feel and be safe in our professional roles. What closes the window of tolerance to the point where, we can't even get off the couch and go to work? That would be sympathetic hyperarousal, that, being stuck in sympathetic overdrive, or being in that kind of freezy dorsal vagal shutdown because your mitochondria cannot produce the energy that it needs, or the perceived threat is so great that you are being shut down. Well, golly gee, that equates with all of the types of trauma that we talked about earlier, doesn't it? Wouldn't all of those things, all of those avoidable traumas and unavoidable, wouldn't that close our window? I think so. I'll give myself a prize. I'm kidding. Give myself a prize and a sip. All right, so let's look at how this shows up in our behavior. But before we do, let's stand up. We got to move. All right, here's what we're going to do. Don't be leaving me now, y'all. Stay with me. All right, we're going to stretch. Hands up. All right, lean to this way. Lean to this way. All right, now take your hands and rotate them around. Get some good lateral movement. All right, and now we're just going to bounce, whatever that means for you. It could be just like walking in place if you're not a bouncer. But let's get some of that stale energy from sitting down. Let's get that energy moving. Oh, you guys, I wish we had somebody filming this. You guys are amazing. All right, and now let's take a huge, deep inhale breath all the way up, and exhale, collapse. All right, take your seats. Woo! We got some energy moving up in here. All right, so what we did is essentially, to bring us back together, we just did another microdoses matters practice. And these are the steps that we have been doing to help you stay regulated in your nervous system, or if you're already regulated in your nervous system, to insulate it so that the dumpster fire workplace that many of us are working in doesn't affect us in our health. Because if we stay regulated in our nervous system, does that help or hurt our mitochondria? Helps. You will have the energy that you need. If you stay regulated in your nervous system, are you in green for good? Yes. You can be mindful, present, curious. That's when you're doing your best thinking, your clinical and critical judgments. That's where we need to be. And so these little kits, which I'm selling for $11 at my table, if you want one, it's such a great practice that you can do. Let's just do one. Let's just say, put yourself in a stressful work day. All right? Whatever that is for you. You're on your last frayed nerve. All right? Okay, get to a private space. Can you get to the restroom? Can you get to a hallway, a stair corridor, an empty patient room, an empty office? Get that place in your mind's eye. All right? Nod your head if you have a private space you can get to for 30 seconds. Okay, seeing head nods? All right. Feel your feet on the ground right now. Put them on the ground. They're already there, but we're going to put our attention to the feet. We're going to feel Mother Gaia beneath our feet. We're feeling Mother Gaia, the earth, hold us. We're putting roots from the bottom of our feet into the soil and down to the center of the earth to anchor us, because this dumpster fire is not going to dysregulate us. We are letting Mother Gaia hold us as we ground. We are going to look around the room and we're going to find 5 things and we're going to name them. So I see a picture on the wall. What do you see? Okay. I see a pen on the table. What do you see? I see my Tibetan bells. What do you see? I see a poster behind me in my peripheral. What do you see? I see a projector on the ceiling. What do you see? Right? We just signaled safety to our nervous system. Right? We grounded in. Hands over healer's heart. Take a deep breath. Remember your why, whatever it is, and it changes from day to day, and that's okay. Now, if you're at work, you may not be able to do this, but I usually have a necklace. I might just adjust my necklace. Gentlemen, you might adjust your tie. You might move your suit jacket over, right? You don't have to make this a thing. That's how you can regulate your nervous system in under 30 seconds. All right, we have a small group activity. Now, we know that if we're safe, that we don't really have any problems, right? Because we're in green. But when we're not safe, that's where it gets problematic. So is ventral vagal being safe, is that a problem for us? No, that's our goal. That's the target, that's the bullseye. We can only play if we feel safe, so that's a target. And we can only really be still in the deepest sense of the word if we feel safe. A dysregulated nervous system has a very difficult time, if it's in sympathetic overdrive, being still. So we got those covered. So let us look at sympathetic overdrive, dorsal vagal fawning, and freezing. What does that look like in our behavior? Right? How do each of us, through our own lived experience and trauma history, how has our biology, our autonomic nervous system, how has it adapted to all that we have endured? All right, so fight, moving towards the stimulus. Some people want to get right up in your grill, don't they? They come at you. All right, that's somebody who's in fight. Angry outbursts, controlling, bullying. They might have explosive behaviors. Those are some cues that you might be in a fight response. The airport, when I'm traveling here, my phone fell out and it dropped on the floor, and my ID and credit cards and cash spilled out. And I was stressed because I only had 50 minutes to make the connecting flight, and I had to go across 18,000 terminals. I was like, ooh, well, there's your fight response. How about we pick up the credit cards and keep moving? Did microdoses matter? Because I recognized that I was having a nervous system response to something that I perceived as dangerous, that I might miss my flight here. And that would break my heart because I just love y'all. All right? So for those of us who are in flight mode or flee, right, we're moving away from the stimulus. All right? And that might show up in our behaviors like needing to be perfect. Raise your hand if you're an overworker. Yeah, that's my go-to, right? Or if you're anxious, or if you're a chronic overthinker, those are all signs that you might be having a flight or flee response. Well, what about the fawners? You know, when we fawn, we can't fight, and we can't flee, so we start people-pleasing. We might have codependent kind of stickiness in our relationships. We might have lost our sense of identity in some fashion, or we might have a hard time with boundaries. All right, so that might be, if this describes you, and at some time all of these have described me, right? But I have such a big trauma history. I wrote a whole book about it, right? So I live this. Not only do I teach it, but I've lived it, right? So sometimes we can get into these codependent, people-pleasing behaviors, and we might judge ourselves for it. Oh, I need to be stronger. I need to set better boundaries. How about we just hold compassion and say, whew, I wonder if this is how my nervous system adapted to all the trauma I've experienced in my life. And maybe I can look at this differently. And maybe I can take a trauma-informed approach to how I choose to manage now that I have more tools. And then there's the freeze, and this is when the body's starting to put you into energy conservation mode for all the reasons that we described. And it's, you need to be left alone. Your brain foggy, indecisive. Oh my God, my former spouse. What would you like for dinner tonight, honey? I don't know, what do you want? And that's just a funny little example, but there are some people that have a really difficult time making decisions at all, right? And so that might be their trauma adaptation, as with being habitually late, lethargic, or shut down. So the takeaway here is if any of these, or all of these, have been you, like they have been me at some point, to understand that these are survival-based nervous system adaptations. When how we've responded to not feeling or not being safe, these are not conscious choices. Well, how does that feel to know that you're just not a raving lunatic or fill in the blank of whatever self-blaming and shaming narrative that you might have in your head? Like, oh, this is just how my autonomic nervous system adapted. All right, so we're going to do and I'm going to ring my bell, so I got to stay on time because Diane will have my head on a platter, so you got to work with me. I want to make Team Gluckstein happy. So we're going to take 30 seconds, and at your table, we'll take a minute. We'll take a full minute because some of the tables have more than others. But just reflect for a moment and think about which one of these do I observe in my own behavior with compassion. You don't have to share your story or anything, but just like, which one do I notice is sort of one that I go, a response, a behavioral response that I have as a result of the trauma that I have experienced in my life. So let's go ahead. I'll watch the clock up here. Go ahead, 1 minute. Talk at your tables. All right, let's just do some random shout outs. Did we have any sympathetic overdrive? Fight people, fight or flight. Yep. How many, this is optional, but fawning. I'm a people pleaser. I have a hard time with boundaries. And then what about people who are just like kind of in the freeze? I'm trying my best, but I'm dragging, right? All right, so I have some case studies here for you. All right. And by all means, help yourself to whatever you need to do, but let's try and keep the room respectfully quiet so everyone can hear. Thank you so much. All right, so you guys are going to help me. Now we're going to look at what we might see in either ourselves or our colleagues in terms of what their trauma behavioral responses are. Are we going to judge what's wrong with them? Or are we going to be curious about, I wonder what happened in their life story? Right. Now, when we're in our own trauma response, we might be up in our judgies, right? And so we need to be aware of that. But the idea is we're not looking to fix anyone. We're not looking to label anyone. We don't need to do anything but hold compassion for what they have experienced in their nervous system as a result of their trauma. And the single most important thing that any of us can do is stay in our window of tolerance. Why? Because nature, in its perfection, has humans as social beings who co-heal and co-regulate together. Which means if I am regulated in my nervous system, everybody in the room, in your reptilian autonomic nervous system, your reptile brain below the lower half, you are co-regulating with me. Did I do anything? Did I hear your whole life story? Did I label, judge, and shame you? No. Did I show up with a regulated nervous system and made sure I take extra good care of myself last night so I could show up here as my very best self so we could all co-regulate together? That's all we have to do. It's not that hard. So when we do this exercise, that's the perspective that we're taking. Not what's wrong with them, but how can I have empathy and compassion for them in their life story that I do not need to know, but I am seeing evidence of, and recognizing that while I do a little microdoses matters, and not the mushroom kind, because we're at work, although I have no judgment on that, but I can't do that for my work, right? And maybe you can't do it for yours, but we can take these practices in 30 seconds or less. Right? And we can observe the behaviors in our patients, in our colleagues, in our clients, in our loved ones, and we can recognize that they are having a behavioral adaptation response, and we can hold empathy for them while staying regulated in our nervous system, which is the only thing we have to do, of course, besides if you're a parent, care for your child kind of thing. But at work, you don't have to go fix your colleague. This isn't a fix-it project, because guess what? None of us are broken. We're all traumatized, right? Because being a human, that's part of the gig. Right? So we can just accept that and work with it and partner with the autonomic nervous system that has kept humans alive over the millennia. All right, so you with me on that? We got it? All right, so I'm going to run through these case studies, and then I'm going to give you guys a couple of minutes, and at your tables you have notepads there that you can use to write down which response each of these, let's say they're co-workers, colleagues, or loved ones, which behavioral trauma response are they demonstrating? All right? And I might have to get some more prizes, so I don't know if... We'll get to the prizes in a minute. All right, so here we go. We have Jordan. She's a med-surg nurse. She's early in her career. She's a people pleaser. She's attached to your hip. Then we have Gabby. He's a physician assistant. He runs tight. He's an anxious kind of guy, and he's a chronic overthinker. We have Nathifa. She's a social worker. She needs to be in control. Do you all know somebody like that? And she borderline feels like bullying because she's so controlling, right? We have Taylor, who is an attorney, and he struggles to focus, and despite his best efforts, he's always just a few minutes late, to the utter annoyance of all. Riley's a first responder, and she is codependent with a capital C, and really has a hard time with boundaries and having her own identity and autonomy in her personhood. And then there's Chin Mei, who's a therapist, and she just doesn't engage. She's there, but not there. And she's got sloth energy, just like really, really low energy. So I'm going to give you about 90 seconds. I'll run the clock. You guys write down, and I'm going to run back while the clock's running and get some more prizes. And I'll be back, and you guys, when I bring the bells, you're going to just get really quiet really fast so Diane doesn't yell at me, okay? Okay, good talk. Off you go. All right. You know how this works? We're going to start over in this corner over here. I want to make sure that I'm an equal opportunity prize person. So let's look at Jordan. Okay, Fawn? Yes. Self-nominate yourself to get a purple shirt. I'll do it because I know how this goes. Purple shirt, come. All right, we're going over to this back section over here. Love you. You're so far away I can't see you with these glasses, but I'm feeling you. You're welcome. All right, I'm gonna do this grandma style so I can give away the next prize. You guys have Gabby. Take flight. Oh, come get your prize. All right, my middle people here. I see you. Do you see me? You guys have Nathifa. Fight. I see black shirt right here. Come get your prize. Yep, you. All right. What about Taylor? Over here. Freeze. You got it. And white shirt right here. You both come up. Okay. Two prizes because there's two white shirts. And because when you're up here, you just make up the rules as you go along. It's kind of like that Whose Line Is It Anyway game show from a million years ago. The points don't matter and the rules change. Yeah, that's what we're doing. All right. My friends over here, the back three tables over here, you guys have Riley. Fawn? Good. Black shirt right here. Yep. All right. And this over here, my friends over here? Freeze. You got it. And black and white top? All right, stay with me. So do you see how this could be a game changer? Recognizing that these behaviors are trauma responses and not them trying to get on your last frayed nerve. But it feels that way. And that's why we attend to our own nervous system first. Because why? Because that's the single most important thing. Because why? If we're regulated in the reptilian system, below their level of consciousness, below your level of consciousness, we're co-regulating. All right, that was a lot. So we're going to take a moment, and this is a microdoses matters practice that you can do with your phone or screensaver, because I'm fun that way. So feel yourself in your mind's eye go into that safe place. And yes, I do have a potty practice. When in doubt, the restroom is my go-to. All right, I'm going to play this video, and I want you to notice. I'm going to play it a couple of times. I want you to notice and name in your mind's eye the colors. I want you to feel the sky, the wind, the breeze, what the weather is like. All right, get sensory with this, starting with naming all the colors you see. Noticing the clouds. Or is there sun in the sky? Or is the sun not showing? What's the temperature like? Do you hear any noises like birds, insects, sirens? No, I'm kidding. All right? Hands over your healer's heart. Deep breath. Remembering your why. Now, is that something you can do on your phone? Could you even do that at a meeting? Can that be your screensaver, something like this? And before you sit down to respond to an email, can you just I'm in a safe space. I'm feeling that grounding stone in my pocket from earlier. I'm feeling my feet on the floor. I'm naming 5 things around me. And I'm sitting down to this screensaver, and if I can't put both of my hands over my heart because that might be awkward at my place of employment, I can adjust my necklace, my suit. I can feel the button on my shirt for a moment, right? Because that's all that's needed. It is literally that simple, okay? Now, in the interest of time, I know I hate it when I have to do this, but I have to do this. There's a little tiny section that I'm going to pass over that was just more examples of different types of archetypes that embody the same things that we've talked about. It was a reinforcement activity, and so you're not missing any information, but I just want to be really respectful of everyone's time, okay? So SMIT, single most important thing is to stay regulated in your nervous system. Why? Why is that the single most important thing? Does it help the mitochondria? Right? Is that going to help your overall health from a whole host of chronic conditions, some of which you may already be experiencing, and if you are, will it help you heal? Yes. Will it alleviate your symptoms? Yes. There isn't anything that is negative. There is not one thing negative about being regulated in your nervous system. It is the single most important thing. But for us to be that, we have to feel safe, internal, in our inner world. So some of us have been through some really difficult things. Some of us are going through some very difficult things right now. Right? And nurturing our nervous system, nourishing our nervous system, single most important thing. So when we are around other people, whether it's our loved ones or people at work, We are the beacon of co-regulation. Do we need to name and blame and shame anybody? No. Do we need to hear their life story, their trauma history, and try and fix them? Please, dear God, no. That would actually create more trauma. Please avoid that at all costs. Can we be curious and compassionate about, I wonder what happened in their life story that led to this behavioral response right now? Because something really hard for them must have happened sometime. And either it's happening right now, or it happened and it was stored in their body and it's coming to the surface right now. Is it pleasant for us to be around that? Heck to the no. It's not pleasant. Sometimes it's uncomfortable. Sometimes it gets our own trauma adaptation going. One of my parents was a yeller. And so when people come at me with their tone raised and they're coming in with that fight response, that gets me in my trauma response. I have to really self-modulate that. I'm aware of that, right? And now I'm getting better about asking for what I need and holding space and doing all the things and regulating my own nervous system, because that person's the limbic system is in the driver's seat. Can I have a coherent conversation about, let's problem solve right now? Let's do some therapeutic communication, not till that person is closer to regulation. So just regulate your nervous system. Do a microdoses right then. I've been in meetings. Another one you can do is the bear hug. Everybody just do this right now. Now I want you to think of your most stressful day at work, and your nervous system felt like an electrical wire that didn't have any insulation around it. You all know that feeling? You are raw, you are a live wire because it is coming in too fast and too hot. And you can feel your sympathetic overdrive coming online. Can you do this in a meeting? Or can you just do one? Can you put one hand over your abdomen? Like, how can you see how this is giving a container for that nervous system, and it's grounding you in ways that are meeting appropriate. You know, a lot of times I'll fuss with my glasses when I'm in a meeting, and that's me naming 5 things. Here are my glasses. Here's my necklace. Here's my pocket. Oh, here's my symbols. And I'm still being present with the person who's dysregulating, but I'm making sure I'm co-regulating. That's the beacon practice. And then use that as a mirror of reflection. How can I learn and grow in my nervous system, in my behavioral trauma adaptations as a result of this encounter with this person? Because right now we just got traumatized people traumatizing people. Because we don't have, if you go to the burnout and compassion fatigue evidence base, have you all seen any of this stuff there? Because I didn't. Right? This is new evidence that is coming in, and we're seeing that we are lacking evidence-informedness in how we are in our professional roles. Because at the end of the day, remember the transpersonal biology piece is that who we perceive as being with us before, during, and after an event is central. We are the people that we need. Because when we heal in our nervous system in these ways, when we heal our trauma, when it is liberated from our bodies, and we can be regulated when other people are having their adaptation, their behavioral response, then we are healing in the collective. So it's not just a me and you thing, it's a we thing. And that's where in modern society we have sort of lost our way a little bit. But this is how we have survived as a species over the millennia, is co-healing and co-regulating. That's how we stayed safe, right? It's so primal and so simple. So you might be wondering, how do I stay regulated? All right, you're talking about this regulated, what do you got for me? I got to go to work tomorrow. Help. Send in reinforcements. All right, well, let's stand up, and that was a lot of information. So here's something that you can do. Go ahead and stand up while I describe this. is something that you can do when you're in that sympathetic overdrive, which is most of us. And so this is something when you're feeling in sympathetic overdrive and meditation is the last thing you can do, here's an alternative. And we're going to let this gal lead us through it.
Our next activity is body tapping. Body tapping is really good to wake our bodies up, get the blood circulating and energy flowing throughout our body. It also helps us release stagnant negative energy. All right, so to do some body tapping, we're actually going to start off just by doing a nice light bounce, soften the knees, relax the shoulders. Remember to always smile and breathe. All right, we're actually going to start off by tapping our chest. And as we breathe out, I want you to think about letting go of anything that's not serving you, any negative feelings. We're going to tap it out. We're going to breathe it out. Nice. So we're going to move to one shoulder. And we're going to move down the arm. You can bring it all the way up. And clap, clap, clap. And bring it to the back of the arm. Gonna incorporate a nice side stretch. Get that armpit. Get the side of the body. Tapping out negative emotions that sometimes we carry in our different organs. And we're just gonna move together. So, shoulder. All the way up. You can tap again. Nice. You can listen to the music we have or turn on your own jam. It works out better. All right, so we're gonna continue and we're gonna move down to the core. Remember, we wanna keep our core nice and warm. Helps with our immune system, helps with the digestive system and circulation. Then we're gonna move down our legs.
You wanna keep going? All right, let's go.
Top of your thighs, knees. All the way to our feet. Back of the legs. Back of the thighs. Hips and side. And you can even go to the back, hitting those kidneys.
Twerking is optional.
Slowly bring your body back up. Move at the pace that works best for you. Maybe you have to slow it down a bit. All right, but at the end, tap wherever else you need to. You could even incorporate that brain tapping, going to the shoulders, up the neck, and using your fingertips or your head. All right, and when you finish your tapping, we sweep, 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 almost as if we're sweeping away dust particles. Do a nice collective breath all together. Breathe in, breathe out, and just tap into how we're feeling. I hope you're feeling much better. Like I said, do some body tapping when you need to release any negative energy.
Beautifully done. I'm so proud of y'all. All right, so let's talk about why, like, we've all heard this. You need to do more self-care. Now, wait, who's doing self-care? I want to see every hand. If you brushed your teeth this morning, that was self-care. Please, dear God, raise your hand. No, I'm kidding. All right, so the problem with just doing random self-care, while it is helpful, right? No harm comes from self-care. But if it isn't aligned with where you are at in your nervous system at that time, it is not optimally effective, because it doesn't get to the root cause. So if we think of our autonomic nervous system as the foundation, and our vagus nerve and our midbrain, right, all the whole reptilian sort of situation, that's the foundation of a regulated nervous system. And then on top of that, we put on our self-caring practices, right? But if we start with the house of cards, what happens? Ultimately, they fall down and we end up right back where we started. And this is what's going on in compassion fatigue. And this is what's going on in, in burnout. I forgot. There, is that better? Can you see now? Thank you. All right, so this is why we aren't progressing. This is why the needle isn't moving, because we're going about self-care wrong, right? We're not getting at the root cause. Right idea, we need to go deeper down the rabbit hole. So what if only there were a way? If only there were a way to do that. There's a way. This is the conceptual framework that emerged from my research. And it's called the Innate Care Plan. And so what we do is we start at the nervous system with the 3 A's. So it's 3 A's plus a B gets you to the 3 R's, and you want to be at the 3 R's. Because the 3 R's are regulation. Is that the single most important thing? Yep, green is good. We want to be reconnected within ourselves. That inner fragmentation, that sense of disconnection within is real and it's painful. And when we start connecting with our healer's heart and what matters most to us, then we can more easily connect with the others in our lives. And then we can restore that healer's heart that quite frankly got decimated by our occupational roles in many cases. But we can't do all the self-care things that we know how to do, because if we put it on top of a dysregulated nervous system, have we gained anything really? Maybe, but we've alleviated some symptoms, and that has value. So this is the subject of my book, and this is the curriculum that we teach in my academy, and we have done this today. So do we have awareness? Let's talk about the 3 A's. Awareness. Do you have more awareness than when you came in this morning? Do you see where there's room to grow in your awareness? Where your self-care is concerned, starting with the nervous system. Good. We attended to our nervous system. Did we do a bunch of practices today where we helped our nervous system, the microdoses matters, the breathing, the symbols, the videos, the tapping and exercise, right? We've done a lot of things that have helped us attend to our nervous system is the single most important thing. And then aligning is the 3rd A, where we start to get clarity. As we get regulated in our nervous system, we can see, and oftentimes that we have misalignment about who and how we want to be in the world inside and what that looks like outside. And from a regulated nervous system, we can start bringing ourselves into alignment so that we are living the life that we dreamed of fully, without all the trauma static knocking us over or wreaking havoc. So it just so happens this framework, for those of you who know Maslow's, it aligns nicely with Maslow's. There's over 100 practices and we have taught many of them, and I'm just going to whip through these slides. There's a lot of words here. I just want you to see that the practices exist. This is not for you to process this information, okay? Just to show you that we're rethinking. That's our theme. We're rethinking self-care. And we're using the innate care plan that you, as the expert of your body, as the expert of your trauma history, are going to partner with your body's innate wisdom and its innate ability for healing, because your body wants that. And you're going to partner with that by doing the 3 A's. The B is all the self-care things we're already doing. I don't need to tell you that. Do we need to hydrate, exercise, eat right, sleep well, be in healthy relationships, have financial health, be supported by community, right? We already know these things. This is not news. But we're putting all of those things on top of a dysregulated nervous system. That's why it's not working. So here's me taking a sip of water and advancing slides. These are some of the practices. We've done some of these today. For that shame we talked about, the shame that comes with the system error that we get blamed for. There's a whole chapter on how to relieve yourself of unhelpful guilt and the shame that you may be carrying. And most of us don't even know we're carrying it until we get into our nervous system and we start discovering how much we're carrying. And that's how we align it to our nervous system right here. We talked about that. So the goal is to stay regulated. I know you're all thinking I don't have time. How many of you are thinking I don't have time for this? Okay, everybody, you ready? Inhale with me. Ready? Exhale. That was a microdoses matters practice, and don't tell me you don't have time for that because you're breathing anyway. All right? I've heard it all. All right, I'm going to skip to the end a little bit here because I want to, again, be respectful. I do understand that when you say you don't have time, that is your sympathetic nervous system stuck in sympathetic overdrive telling you that you don't have time, and it is real. I am asking you to shift your awareness for another way, to bring in your upstairs brain and go, whew, that sounds like my nervous system is in flight or flight, right? We're not going to do this exercise, but you guys got the idea because we've done it all. So if all else fails, one conscious breath. For your takeaway today, take the microdoses matters practice with you. It can be done in under 30 seconds, any place that you are. I have been walking as a nurse to a code and have done that practice en route. All right? That's how it works. And you can also do it while you're sitting down to respond to an email. Right? So I'm sorry, but we only have a couple minutes, and there is one mission critical thing we have to do. And this is me sharing real quick where my Thrive Superhighway, to finish our story together, because now you are part of my story and I am part of yours, and that makes my healer's heart so very happy, truly. In 2021, I set the intention circled in red as part of my own journey that I have explained to you how you can use in your journey. That in 2021, I will release an international bestseller and supporting platform that facilitates healing for millions of people with ease, grace, acceleration, abundance, prosperity, and optimal health. And so it is. My word for 2021 was liberation. And that led me right here to you, to the top of Mount Volcan Irasu in Costa Rica. Find out, that's where I found out who and how I wanted to be as a thriving, caring healer who's making a difference in the way that heal the healer calling makes sense to me. I'm inviting you to take a similar journey, not as hard as mine, if you can avoid it. But I know a lot of us have had really hard stuff and are having really hard stuff. So I have a tradition. We have two things we're going to do. We're going to take some group selfies for prizes, because I always do this. And then I have a QR code. So let me just get a couple selfies. This side of the room first. All right, everybody wave. All right, over here. Woo! Over here. Woo! We'll see if that's a long ways away, so hopefully. All right, thank you for that, because I look back on these, and these are part of my story, and this is what lights my healer's heart up, is what we've done today. I am lit with love and service and light, and I'm so, so blessed and grateful to be here. If you would be so kind, it's like 3 or 4 questions just to kind of solidify key concepts that we talked about. I want you to make sure that you take those with you in a very embodied way. And then you can opt in to stay in touch with me. And then the very last thing, it says one more click again or something, and you can enter into a raffle. I have donated 1 scholarship to the Healer's Heart Academy. It's a $2,000 value. It's a 12-week hybrid program that you can take up to 1 year to complete, depending on what works best for you. So if you want to be a part of that raffle, jump in, no obligation to do so. It has been such joy. Thank you. From my healer's heart to yours. Until next time, namaste.